Hey, folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Southwest Virginia fishing report with Matt Reilly. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. How are you?
I'm getting there. I'm glad to be home. I don't know if I told you this before we started recording, but I've been traveling a lot. And next weekend, Cameron graduates from Chapel Hill. And when I get home from that trip, I will have been out of town 5 of the last 6 weekends.
Yeah, that's a lot, man. That's I'll tire anybody out.
Yeah, I'm not as old as I'm not as young as I used to be. And it's kind of funny. You're a little croaky because you're down in Brookneal and the pine pollen and the dust is kind of getting to you on the striper game, right?
Yeah, it's been pretty wicked last couple of weeks. I have probably been through more cough drops than I've had in my lifetime just in the last couple of weeks. Just trying to take the edge off a little bit, but we don't have that in the mountains where I live for the most part. And it's been dry. So lots of particulate matter in the air, period.
Yeah, it's amazing too. Like, you get to those times I can kind of remember, I've got family kind of in eastern North Carolina in that part of the world. And it's like you see these just clouds of basically yellow-green pollen dust from the pine trees.
Yep. You feel it hitting you in the face running up the river too.
Yeah. And so you were telling me before we started recording that things have kind of popped off a little bit kind of earlier than normal on the striper front. So you're pretty close to kind of rolling the sidewalk up on that.
Yeah, we've had some sort of early warm weather. Just been the story the last couple of years, but also very little water, very little rain. We're supposed to get some this weekend. It may be fairly significant, but otherwise it's been pretty low, pretty dry in most of the state. So that's pretty much the story on the new. Back home all the way up through the Shenandoah Valley up into Maryland, Pennsylvania. So, hopefully we'll have another summer like we did last year, but I'm not real hopeful at this point.
Yeah, I guess the silver lining, if we come a little bit closer back to home, is we didn't have a scouring flood during the smallmouth spawn.
Yeah, for the most part, we're still not out of the woods for that yet. If we get through the first half of May without anything crazy happening, I'll be pretty happy.
Yeah. And so you've got, I don't know, handful, you'll fish you were telling me kind of do the striper thing through the weekend, and then you're going to head back home, and that's going to be smallmouth with a parenthetical for the cicadas are coming.
Yeah. I may do a couple more smallmouth trips with some of my folks that, can kind of hop in last minute, but otherwise, I'm hoping to hit the road and go look for some bugs. Hopefully, that warm, dry weather, with, potentially some more significant rains coming at a critical, early May timeframe may bring those bugs out a little bit. Kind of right on time with this closing up shop up here. And we're starting to see some pop up in different places around the Southeast. So, we may be right on the cusp right now.
Yeah. And so, when you get back home, where do you expect kind of in the, done with the spawn, fully in post spawn kind of mode for the smallmouth fishing to be?
Yeah. Usually by mid-May, most of our females are kind of back into bait fish chasing shape. But outside of that, you'll have males coming off the nests by mid-May too. So that's really kind of the turning point. I think, 15th through the 25th or so of May is when you see a lot of that transition happen. So, if I were smallmouth fishing next week, I'd be, especially with the low flows, I'd be probably throwing some top waters around, some poppers, some, slider diver kind of things. Fishing fairly slow, for some of those bigger post-spawn females, trying to stay away from nest sites if I can. And then, working more and more sort of pretty active streamer, presentations into the program as we get later in the month.
Yeah, and I know on kind of the popper slider front, where are you kind of on that the frog hatch?
I have done some frog fishing. I think it's a legitimate approach. I'm not real um positive that it's a major foraging event on frogs specifically, but so much of targeting smallmouth bass has to do with um because they're very opportunistic predators. They'll eat just about anything they can fit in their mouths. So um the patterns at any given time of year tend to be where opportunity overlaps with um the presentation as it relates to fishing that style of fly or type of imitation, um, where that sort of meets the smallmouth in their general behavioral sphere at that given time. So if you've got lazy post spawn females in low water fishing something that's going to stay on the surface or very near the surface that can be fished slowly and still trigger a fish is a good approach. Um, and vice versa in the spring, early spring pre-spawn, larger offerings that pack a bigger protein punch, um, tend to meet the smallmouth where they're at then too. So I think the frog, the diving bait fish kind of thing, I think that has a lot of place this time of year because it's fairly versatile. You can fish them fast, you can fish them slow. Um, but I'm not entirely sold on the like smallmouth are keying in on frogs idea.
Got it. And we'll back up just a little bit on the cicada front because I'm sure you get a million questions like, when are they coming? And it's like, I don't think most people really appreciate how incredibly localized the hatch is.
Yeah, so every brood, I believe we have 12 broods. Some of them are 13, some are 17-year bugs, and they're temporally staggered. So, and each brood has its own very specific geographic range. Um, and knowing sort of the observed geographical range of the specific brood that's scheduled to come out on any given year is the key to finding bugs and fishing that year. So, you hear a lot of this like, yeah, we had them 4 years ago and they're coming back again this year. And, that's just not how it works because the brood you had 4 years ago, if it was a 17-year bug, isn't going to come out for another, 13 years. So, um, understanding that concept is I mean pretty paramount to the whole thing. Um, and I tell a lot of people this too. 17 years is a long time, um, relatively speaking, to development, to the internet. We're at a pretty great place right now for remote um, internet-based citizen science reporting, and that was not the case 2 emergences ago for the brood that we're going to have this year. 34 years ago, we were in a very different place with the internet. So, um, some of those maps, some of those county lists and things are pretty accurate, but there's a lot of missing information in some cases. Um, So, and like I said, development, some of those areas that had a lot of bugs 17 years ago that have been clear cut and pine trees planted and housing developments put up and parking lots paved, there's no bugs there anymore. So things do change, but starting with the geographic distribution of the specific brood that's emerging that year is important.
Yeah, and it's even super localized kind of within that geographic distribution. So it reminds me a little bit of like if you're serious about it, you really almost need to get out there and put your scouting time in just like you were hunting for, deer or
Yeah.
turkey, right?
Yeah, you do. You got to do a lot of driving sometimes. But like you said, even the county name is too general sometimes. Sometimes they're just in a corner of a county or, in 50 acres of a county. I've seen places like that too. So, yeah, there is a lot of scouting involved.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing? No substitute for putting in the time.
That is correct.
Well, folks, we love questions on the articulate fly. You can email me or DM me on social media. whatever's easiest for you. And if we use your question, I will send you some articulate fly swag, might even include a new butcher shop sticker. And we'll, a drawing for some cool stuff from Matt at the end of the season. And Matt, before I let you go, I know, days with you at this point, absent some knock on wood major weather event, are scarce as hen's teeth, but you want to let folks know kind of what you have available, how to reach out and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. Still got a couple summer days left, couple early fall smallmouth days. Talking about cicadas, if anybody's interested in that program, I just have people reach out to me to let me know so I can kind of keep you appraised of the situation. But another one, I'm looking at musky fishing in fall and winter. That stuff will be here before we know it too. So just thinking about the future.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, folks, as I always say, you owe it to yourself to get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Matt.
Thanks, Marv.